Hey everybody, I'm Alan with Dad's Playing Games, and this is the third video in a strategy series we're doing about the soldiers of Frostgrave. Be sure to check the details below for links to our other Frostgrave material, and there you'll also find timestamps in case you want to jump ahead or behind to a certain part of the video. For all of these videos, I'm grouping the soldiers into classes, and then within those classes, I'm looking at the soldiers' costs, their stats and equipment, their various uses in the game, their viability both early or late in a campaign, and then I'll be comparing the soldiers within the class against each other. For this video, we'll be looking at the fighters, which are the Infantryman, the Man-at-Arms, and the Treasure Hunter. Starting with the cost to hire these soldiers, the Infantryman requests 50 gold crowns to join your warband, while the Men-at-Arms and the Treasure Hunter both ask for 80 gold crowns. One thing I'll mention when talking about soldier costs is all soldiers requesting less than 80 gold crowns have 10 or less health, while those costing 80 gold crowns or more have at least 12 health. Next, we'll move on to the stats and equipment for these soldiers. If a grunt, a thug or thief, is your basic melee soldier, all three of these soldiers here are a nice step up from that soldier. Starting with the similarities of these three soldiers, the only thing they actually have in common with any of their equipment or stats is that all three of them are wearing leather armor. You'll notice when you see my soldiers that I often depict leather armor as more of light armor and mail armor as more of a heavy armor, just based on the figures that I have and that I want to use. But I will hopefully always refer to them in these videos by their official names of leather armor and mail armor, even though some of my models clearly aren't wearing armor that looks like leather. One thing that's, I guess, a similarity with these three soldiers is that all three of these soldier types make use of both of their hands. Let's start by taking a look at the Infantrymen. They have a move of 6, fight plus 3, armor of 11 with their leather armor, a will of plus 0, and 10 health. If you're watching these videos in order, this is the first time that we see a two-handed weapon. These weapons cause plus 2 damage on a successful hit, and as implied by the name two-handed weapon, it requires both hands to wield the weapon. Next, we'll move on to the Man-at-Arms. They also have a move of 6 and a fight plus 3, but they have an armor of 12, which we'll discuss shortly. They have a will of plus 1, and they have 12 health. The Man-at-Arms carries a hand weapon, and is the first soldier I've mentioned in this series that also carries a shield. Both this and his leather armor each contribute plus 1 to his armor stat, giving him a total of 12. And then the last soldier in this class is the Treasure Hunter. These soldiers have a move of 7, a fight plus 4, armor of 11, will of plus 2, and 12 health. Treasure Hunters carry a hand weapon and a dagger. Normally, if a soldier has just a dagger, they deal minus 1 damage. However, if they are dual wielding with a hand weapon and a dagger, they instead gain a plus 1 fight, which is already figured into these soldiers' stat of plus 4. Now that we've discussed their training and equipment, we'll look at how to use these soldiers in a battle. Obviously, all three of these soldier types are melee soldiers, but they fulfill their melee role in different ways. When we look at the Infantrymen, they're kind of lopsided in that they have good offense with their plus 3 fight and their two-handed weapon, which deals plus 2 damage. However, with their armor of 11 and only 10 health, they're a little squishy when it comes to defense. Since their offense is clearly their strong point, I like to send them after weaker opponents on the battlefield. They're able to do some pretty serious damage to an encumbered thug or thief that's trying to get treasure off the board, or against a range opponent that doesn't do as well in melee combat. They're also deadly against spellcasters, especially early in the campaign before the spellcasters have improved their stats. Now looking at the men-at-arms, they're probably one of the most well-rounded soldiers in the game. Their stats are pretty good, but none of their stats are excellent. Their 12 armor combined with their 12 health makes them relatively sturdy, and their fight +3 is pretty good. They can serve as a jack-of-all-trades, master of none. I seem to be just as likely to use these soldiers either as frontline melee troopers, treasure grabbers, or as a wall to guard part of the battlefield. Their good defense makes them a pretty good candidate to grab a treasure that's maybe in the middle of the board or somewhere that's well contested, because they should be able to withstand some attacks against them as they try to get that treasure off the board. Now we'll look at the treasure hunter. If the infantrymen are all about offense and the men-at-arms are a little more about defense, the treasure hunters are all about speed and efficiency. Their move of 7 means they can get around the battlefield pretty quickly, and their impressive fight stat of +4 makes them very capable fighters. These soldiers make great treasure grabbers, as their name implies, and they can serve well as frontline fighters as well. As far as the viability of these 3 soldier types throughout the course of a campaign, I would say that early on, the infantryman is the most viable, simply because he costs less than the other 2 options that you have. And early on in a campaign, I would highly recommend hiring at least 1, if not more, infantrymen. As I mentioned before, their powerful offensive abilities can be devastating to low-level wizards. Late in a game, there is a soldier that does basically everything the infantryman does, only better. So if you have money to spare later in the campaign, you'll likely phase the infantrymen out as your warband progresses. Moving to the men-at-arms, if you hire 1 or 2 of these soldiers early in a campaign, they're going to be some of the strongest, sturdiest soldiers you've got out there. However, they cost 80 gold crowns, which means you likely won't have more than 1 of them in your warband. Their versatility in being able to serve multiple roles, whether that's as frontline fighter, treasure grabber, or as a wall, they perform those tasks fairly well. And that means having 1 or 2 of these soldiers even late in a campaign can still be quite useful. And even though later you'll be able to hire a better armored soldier, that soldier has a lower move than the men-at-arms. So even though the men-at-arms aren't the best defenders in the entirety of the game, the men-at-arms do maintain their versatility as the campaign goes on. And looking at the treasure hunters, buying one of these guys early in a campaign is a great idea because these guys are fast and speed is essential in this game for getting to treasure and getting it off the board. Combined with their fight of +4, it makes these soldiers extremely powerful. The stats of the treasure hunter hold up great throughout the entire campaign. No soldier in this game has a fight higher than +4, and no soldier besides a warhound has a move higher than 7. And as this campaign goes on, replacing your thieves with treasure hunters is a pretty good way to power up your warband. So now, to compare these 3 soldier types, which one is the best? The infantryman has the advantage of being the cheapest 2-handed weapon wielding soldier in the entire game. So if you don't have a lot of gold crowns and you need some good offense, the infantryman will fill that role nicely. However, if you need anything other than just pure offense, I would suggest going with one of the other 2 soldiers. The man-at-arms, though he costs 30 gold crowns more than an infantryman, gives you some good increases in defense. The man-at-arms has 1 higher armor due to his shield, and 2 more health and 1 more point of will. But they don't deal the extra +2 damage that the infantryman does with his 2-handed weapon. Comparing the treasure hunter to the man-at-arms, the hunter has 1 more move, 1 more fight, and 1 more will. The only advantage the man-at-arms has is his armor stat is 1 higher. So is having an improved armor stat better than having an improved fight stat, move stat, and will stat? looking at those individually, I would say having better armor is better than having better will. There's a lot of battles where your soldiers won't even use their will stat. When it comes to the move, there's times where the move is beneficial, and there's times where the armor is beneficial. They're kind of apples to oranges there. But when we look at the armor versus the fight stat, I think we have an easier way to decide a winner there. With the armor stat, the only time you use that is when you have lost the initial fight. However, with the fight stat, whether you're the attacker or the defender, it comes into play. If you're being shot at, your fight stat can help you avoid that arrow. And if you're being attacked in close combat, having an improved fight can actually mean you win the battle and cause your opponent damage instead. The armor stat can be slightly better than the fight stat in a few niche circumstances. The main one that comes to mind is when you're fighting off against something like an elemental bolt with a +8 shoot attack, or a push spell with a +10, where you're probably going to lose the fight anyway. Then having some extra armor could help to buffer that once the attack does hit you. So considering that both the treasure hunters and the men-at-arms have better stats than the infantrymen, and seeing that the treasure hunter has a better fight and move stat than the men-at-arms, I would vote the winner for the fighter class is the treasure hunter. And I don't think I'm alone in this decision. I've read a lot online about people discussing the treasure hunter's power, their possible brokenness, and the fact that they only cost 80 gold crowns to hire. In fact, I've read about people building entire warbands consisting almost completely of treasure hunters. There's also some controversy regarding dual wielding and the fact that it gives +1 fight. A lot of people have questioned the reality of this, if that would really help someone fight. I even read somewhere of someone who's actually trained as a sword fighter saying that holding a dagger in their offhand does not make you a better fighter. And there's also the question of, why does holding a dagger in your offhand help you to defend against arrows? And I don't know if there's any confirmation to this, but I have heard at least some rumors that when Frostgrave 2.0 comes out, that there will be some changes to the rules of using a dagger as an offhanded weapon. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it'll be interesting to see. If you've watched any of my solo campaign, you'll know that in there I have actually removed the option of having a dagger as an offhanded weapon because it seems so powerful. And I've also limited all of my warbands to only one treasure hunter per warband because I don't want to be a warband just loaded with treasure hunters. So that's all for this video. I would love to hear your thoughts and experiences with any of these 3 soldiers in the fighter class. And I'd like to know if you agree or disagree with my assessment. So please let me know in the comments below. Also, while you're there, you can click like or subscribe so you can keep up with all of the content that Dad's Playing Games is releasing. And with that, I'm Alan with Dad's Playing Games, and we'll see you on the next video.